Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and I am going to be my own guest today because this is in the we're doing this episode the Saturday after Easter while we are still in the midst of the coronavirus situation. And I decided not to try to make anybody come in here today. And I'm just going to do a talk on some home remedies that I've used myself that have worked for me and so forth. Now, things that I'm planning on doing in the near future, if it ever quits snowing, is my husband and I are going to go out in the woods and dig up some ramps, or what a lot of you think of as leaks. And that's always going to be a lot of fun. We like to do that. I also wanted to mention this newspaper clipping that I cut out. You'll remember a few weeks back we had an episode with Patty Benton from the Northern Chautauqua Canine Rescue, and she brought on a dog with her named Heaven. And she did a really nice write-up for us for the newspaper. I'm going to read it to you. Meet Heaven, the new star of television. Heaven will star on cable access Chautauqua channel 1301 Fresh Perspectives starting April 11th and running through the 24th at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. The show was taped a month ago and Heaven was perfect as always. She has been paired with many different dogs at the shelter and seems to buddy up well with all of them. She would prefer a cat-free, young child-free home, and a comfy couch would suit her just fine. Sunbathing is one of her favorite activities too. Heaven has done very well at all the events she has gone to with lots of different people. The shelter does not have open hours now, but the website at www.caninerescue.org shows all the available dogs. If you see one you are interested in, fill out an application, which does not commit you to adopt, and if you are approved, you will receive a call to set up an appointment to visit the dogs. The shelter phone number is 326-PAWS 7297. Check out Heaven on TV and see what a real star she is. New York State Registered Rescue 028. And the other rescue in Westfield is the Thrifty Kitty cat rescue on Main Street in Westfield. I haven't heard from them or tried to call them or anything, but I'm assuming that you would have to have an appointment now at this time if you wanted to adopt a cat also. We like to feature both of these shelters on Fresh Perspectives. Now, I'm going to start talking about different things that have worked for me. Now, my first I went to a yoga retreat at the Chautauqua Institution when I was in my 20s. It was in the month of November. And I was introduced to squeezing the juice out of half of a lemon and putting it in a glass and filling the glass the rest of the way up with water. Now, this usually would be like about 12 ounces of water that you can drink in the morning. It's a really good, healthy way to start off your day Then you can do your exercise routine of the morning, whatever kind of exercise you do, and then have your breakfast following that. But over the years, I have tried various different things with lemon juice. I remember one time we were visiting some relatives of my husband's who lived on Chautauqua Lake at the time, and we were sitting down by the lake, and it was after dark, and later that I noticed after we left there that I had what felt like a mosquito bite on one of my feet. This was quite a number of years ago. And a day or two later, I noticed a large area of my foot was turning very red. And so I went and looked up in a book, and I believe it was, well, I don't remember the name of the book, but I remember the herbalist who wrote the book said to bandage a piece of lemon if you had a poisonous insect bite or sting, to bandage a piece of the lemon onto the bite. And what it does is it draws the venom out of I think it must have been a spider bite, because those can be really nasty. And I noticed that, so I bandaged it on, and for a few days pus came out after that, and then it was real itchy, but it looked a lot better. And later I got to where I was using it on bee stings, and what you do is you hold a piece of lemon on where you've been stung. Try to do it right away so it doesn't have a chance to spread, and hold it on there and for about half an hour to 45 minutes. And you won't even be able to tell you've been stung because it has drawn all of that out of there, out of all of the venom out. And then the pain goes away with the venom. So anyways, I've tried it on other things, like when I squeeze the juice in the morning and drink my water with lemon juice, then I will sometimes, if I would have a pimple or something, I could rub the inside of the peel on the pimple and do that for a day or two, and that would clear up really fast. And the same thing would happen if I would rub it on a cut, or a scratch or something like that. It just helps things heal up a lot faster. And another thing that you can do with that is you can put the lemon juice with honey in a hot herbal tea if you have a sore throat, and that really helps a lot with a sore throat. Okay, I'm going to move along now to garlic. My husband grows garlic in the garden. He plants it in the spring. And no, I'm not in the spring. He plants it in the fall and then harvests it in the summer, usually in July. Now, some of the things that garlic is good for, it is good for lowering blood pressure and blood sugar levels both. It has that lowering effect. And onions also help with lowering blood pressure and blood sugar levels. We found that eating garlic raw, if you have a cold, helps to decongest. Like you can take a raw clove of garlic and put it in your mouth and nibble at it, and so that some of the juice runs out of it, and let that run down your throat, and that can help a lot with decongesting. one person who spoke at one of our Vegetarian Society dinners one time, a young woman named Katie Rowan, was telling us something that she made, would make for her kids when they would get sick, and it would help bring down a fever. And it was, she called it nature's penicillin, and it was, I think, a grapefruit, an orange, and one or two lemons, and a lot of crushed garlic. And, you know, taking spoonfuls of this will help to bring down a fever and help you recover from colds and things more quickly. And then another thing that somebody told me about one time, an herbalist, I cannot tell you how to get a hold of her because she has left the area and I don't know where she is. But I remember when she was speaking at one of our Vegetarian Society dinners one time, that she told us that we could use garlic to get rid of warts, like to cut a piece of garlic open and have it bandaged on the wart. You know, I think you'd probably put a fresh piece on every day. And the only thing is, you don't want to bandage it onto normal skin that doesn't have a wart. So what she was recommending at the time was, I don't know if those of you watching remember or not, but it used to be people would buy iron-on patches that you could get, like when your jeans got holes in them, that people would use. And she said that you would cut a hole that was the exact size of the wart in a piece of that. You would have that stuck to your skin, and then you could take a Band-Aid and put the piece of garlic on there, and it would gradually get rid of the wart. And so those are things that you can try. Now, one time I met a naturopathic dentist whose name is Ellie Phillips, and this dentist has licenses to practice dentistry in 3 countries. She was originally from England, so she became a dentist when she lived in England, and then she left there and went to Switzerland and got licensed to practice dentistry there, and then came to the United States and got licensed to practice dentistry here. However, she does not practice ordinary dentistry anymore because she's more interested in people doing what they have to do in order to prevent themselves from getting tooth decay. She said that, I remember her saying that I wish I could get her to come here on Fresh Perspectives sometimes and talk about this herself, but she has her own line of dental products for preventive purposes, and she told us about the original amber-colored Listerine, which many of you know of, and a lot of people won't use because they don't like it. Now, she said that Listerine was a really good antibacterial mouth rinse, and it would kill a lot of the bacteria in your mouth. However, she also stressed the importance of following that up with an alkaline mouth rinse. And the reason you would want to use an alkaline mouth rinse following it is because the Listerine is acidic, and acids can damage the enamel on your teeth And so you must always, if you rinse your mouth with Listerine, you must always follow it with an alkaline mouth rinse. And so anyways, there's other things that you can do with the old original formula of Listerine, and it has to be the old original amber-colored formula. During the Black Plague in Europe, I think that was like maybe in the 1600s or 1700s or something like that, that during the plague, robbers, thieves would want to rob valuable items off of the bodies of the people who had died from having the plague. But in order to do this without catching the plague themselves, they would take certain herbs and they would rub these herbs all over their hands, because they were herbs that were known for their antibacterial properties. So they would rub them on their hands as a way to try to prevent themselves from catching the plague from the dead bodies that they would be robbing off of. I thought that was a really interesting story. Now, I've also, since then, have tried Listerine on other things, and I have actually used it. I have actually applied it to cuts and scratches that I've had, and I have to say it works just as well as the lemon juice in healing things up. And so that's another thing that you can use it for, and it has a certain thing. Some certain types of fungus on the skin, it will kill. Like when you get the kind of fungus infections that people get, you know, when the weather's really hot and muggy, that you can get like rashes on certain parts of your body, like as if it's a heat rash or something. But apparently, what it is in that kind of weather, it's fairly common that these areas of the body that get really moist, it's kind of like a yeast infection or a fungus infection or something is what this rash is that we get. And you can wash these areas twice a day, and every time you wash them, you can apply the old original formula of amber-colored Listerine, and it will clear up these rashes. It will help to clear them up. And from personal experience, I can say that it's actually very effective. Another thing that you want to do with the Listerine is technically, this is another thing I learned from this dentist, and technically, we should be soaking our toothbrushes for a minute every day in this old original formula of Listerine, because when we have a cold or flu or whatever, we can catch these diseases back from ourselves. Have you ever had the experience of having a cold and then you seem to be over it, and then the next thing you knew you had another cold? So it's good if you do this, because you can help to prevent yourself from catching something back from yourself that you've done before. And another reason this dentist told me that you would want to do this is if you keep your toothbrush hanging in the bathroom and you flush the toilet without closing the lid, that some particles of what was in the toilet can come up and get on everything in the bathroom. So that might be a good idea to have your toilet closed when you flush it also. Now, another thing that I have had experience with is something called colloidal silver. It's spelled Colloidal, and the word silver. Now, what colloidal silver is it's silver that has been bonded to, usually it's made with something called deionized water. How they deionize it, I don't know, but through an electrical process, the silver becomes bonded to the water. And this is something, I can't tell you where to get it. You'll have to look it up on the internet if you want some. But I'm not going to tell you where you can buy it, because that would be like advertising for those companies, and I'm not allowed to do advertisements on the program. But you can check it out on the internet and find out where you can get it. Now, I have used it. My first, actually, it was when I contacted an herbalist, because I had just been told that I had thyroid cancer and didn't want to lose my thyroid gland, and I had called her up, and we were discussing what I was going to do about this without losing my thyroid gland, because that's what they do. The medical profession does, is they take it out of you, and then you are depending on a drug for the remainder of your life. So we were talking about what I was going to do about that. When she started telling me things about the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want people to know about its germ-killing properties of colloidal silver, because they want to make money off of their antibiotics and so forth. She said that, I remember her saying this, she said, someday there's going to be a pandemic, and we're going to need something like this. But I'm not trying to tell you to use it if you come down with it. I'm just going to tell you some experiences that I have had with colloidal silver. And you can make the decision for yourself if you should happen to try it for something you've come down with. You'll know in a day or two if it's working, because you will feel so much better. My first experience was several years back, more than a decade ago, maybe 15, I think it might have been 14 or 15 years ago. I had this really nasty, come down with this really nasty sinus infection. And after a few days of suffering with it and having it not get any better or anything, I finally went to the doctor's office, and I was given an antibiotic called a Z-Pak by one of the physician's assistants that works at the doctor's office. And that basically didn't do anything. After the 10 days on the Z-Pak, or however many days it was, I still wasn't feeling good. So I called the doctor's office back, and one of the doctors at that office had gotten the message and prescribed something, a really strong antibiotic called Levaquin. And I had that for 10 days, I think it was. And every day, exactly half an hour after I would take it, I would have an anxiety attack that would last a full 2 hours. And then every night that I was on it, I would have a really bad nightmare, and the nightmares got worse and worse every night. And the last night I seem to remember waking up screaming because it was so bad. And so I eventually found out that that particular drug, Levaquin, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and that's why I was having the nightmares and the anxiety attacks that were so long-lasting and bad. So anyway, I wasn't still completely better even after that. So I had remembered the conversation with the herbalist. So I managed to find some colloidal silver to purchase. And like I said, it didn't clear up the sinus infection completely, and the symptoms even started to increase again after I finished the Levaquin. And so I started taking, about a week later, I started taking the colloidal silver, which I had managed to get my hands on. It's something that you hold it underneath your tongue for a full minute before you swallow it. And that helps it work better, holding it underneath your tongue first. Well, guess what? That sinus infection cleared right up very quickly after that. And so at a later time, I had some symptoms, not the same year, a few years later or something. I had some influenza symptoms. So I took colloidal silver for that, and that I got over that very quickly and a lot easily. Just the things that I had would just go away really fast. And one time, sometimes I'll get like a bloodshot eye, and I have eye drops, some homeopathic eye drops that I use for a bloodshot eye, and it usually clears those up very quickly. But this one time it wasn't clearing up, so I figured it must be conjunctivitis. So I used colloidal silver by putting it directly into my eye, and that cleared it up. So I figured it must have been conjunctivitis. Now, according to the reading that I've done on the subject, the colloidal silver, it tends to be effective not only against bacteria, but against viruses, fungus infections, parasites like worms, and amoeba and protozoan infections. According to the reading that I've done, it doesn't interact in a bad way with any other medications that you might be on. The pathogens, and unlike antibiotics, the pathogens cannot build up a resistance to it because of the way it kills them, which is through smothering. It smothers the pathogens, and I guess you cannot build up a resistance to being smothered. Okay, but you want to be careful not to overdo taking it. Colloidal silver is not something that you can take all the time as a preventive measure, because there is one side effect that will happen if you use it all the time. You cannot. You have to wait until you actually come down with something, and as soon as the symptoms are gone, you want to quit taking it. Unlike antibiotics, if once the symptoms are gone, you know the pathogens have been killed. Now, but the reason you don't want to take it on a regular basis is it can turn, if you take it all the time or too much, it can turn your skin a permanent blue-gray color. And years ago, aristocratic people used to carry a silver coin in their drinking water when they traveled because they knew that silver would kill germs. So, and then they, of course, had, people who could afford it had sterling silverware and everything. So they were getting it all the time, and their skin actually turned a gray-blue color. And this is where the expression blue bloods came from. Was these people, their skin actually turned blue, and that's how that expression came to be. So you want to be real careful to use it appropriately. Now, some of you are probably wondering if it would be effective against the coronavirus. I have to say I don't know. You could try it, but I can't make any promises because I don't know anything about this disease. And nobody does really. You could try it. You'd know in a couple of days, in a couple of days if it was working, because if it is working, it works very quickly, and you start to feel better very quickly. Now, moving along to something called extra virgin olive oil, and I wanted to bring this up because I've had some really good experiences with olive oil, mainly with sunburns and first-degree burns from cooking. I remember one time I was reading books about Edgar Cayce, who, even though he died in 1948, has continued to be referred to as the greatest psychic of the 20th century. And when I was reading books about him where he would do health readings and things for people, he would talk about the great healing powers of olive oil. So one day after I had read this, when I had just happened to get sunburned, so I put olive oil on all of the parts of my body where I had the sunburn, where there'd been exposed skin, and I did this twice a day, and seriously, that sunburn cleared up in a couple of days without my skin peeling. And I've done this over the course of the years, on several different occasions when I've had sunburns, and it always, twice a day, it clears it up very quickly without your skin peeling, like skin usually does peel when you've had a sunburn. And then when I realized I was successful with that, then I would start putting it on if I got like first-degree burns while I was cooking a meal or something. I would put it on those burns, and those first-degree burns, they'd usually be cleared up by the next day. I'd be feeling a lot better. I found that it actually works better than aloe vera, and from my experience, on burns. So then I wanted to move along to something called activated charcoal. Now, activated charcoal, okay, this goes back to my experience with activated charcoal. goes back to when I was told that I had thyroid cancer. I've mentioned it before on Fresh Perspectives, but never really told you the whole story about everything that the herbalist had me do. And one of the things was that I had to wear activated charcoal, a poultice of activated charcoal and green clay that I wore on the front of my neck every night when I slept. For an entire year I did this until the problem went away. Other things that I did was switch from being just vegetarian to a totally plant-based diet. And in fact, the first couple of months, I only ate really raw foods. And I remember the raw foods gave me so much energy that in only a month, I felt the best I'd ever felt in my life. And, but anyway, that's what I did. It was activated charcoal and green clay was what the poultices were made out of. The herbalist told me this would pull cancer cells out through the pores on my skin when the cancer cells died. And she said, your neck will break out because of this, and it did. But it was a temporary kind of thing. And then I took something called Ambrotose. I don't even remember the name of the company that I got it from, but it was a friend, a chiropractor friend of the herbalist who got it for me from somewhere. And that I had to take, I think, maybe twice a day, a quarter of a teaspoon twice a day. It was a powder. And the powder was made out of a nutrient that comes from shiitake mushrooms. And it was concentrated amounts that had been extracted from the mushrooms, because I was told I'd have to eat an awful lot of mushrooms. I just probably wouldn't be able to eat enough in order for it to do its job. But I'd take a quarter of a teaspoon a couple times a day, dissolved in water, and well, anyway, it worked. I have a healthy thyroid gland now, 16 years afterwards. Now, activated charcoal is something, you can get activated charcoal capsules that you can take if you have digestive issues. You're not supposed to take it for a prolonged period of time, but you can take it for a few days if you have digestive problems. It's supposed to be really good if you get food poisoning. Now I was told by this herbalist that taking both the colloidal silver and activated charcoal, if you have food poisoning, helps to pull all of that poison out of your tissues. And the colloidal silver kills the bacteria that causes it. And I guess somebody even told me one time that activated charcoal is used for people who've taken drug overdoses too, to remove excess, the excesses of the drugs out of the person's body. And so there is a lot of good things going on, and I want to encourage all of you out there to try to eat a diet that supports your immune system. Don't be eating refined foods right now. I would not recommend buying meat and eating it right now. I think you really need to eat a really pure diet at this time and continue to get regular exercise. And and do things that have a positive, try to think positive thoughts and try to keep yourself busy doing things that will keep your mind off of it. Like getting out in nature where hopefully you can get out in nature someplace instead of, a park where there might be a lot of people going to. Maybe you could get out in the woods somewhere and take a nice long hike and breathe really fresh air and everything. I'm going to shout out here to the guys on the crew. Do you want to ask any questions about anything that I've said? No response. But anyways, you probably heard about the tiger at the Bronx Zoo that came down with the coronavirus. I guess that means that cats can get it. I had heard that dogs can't. So that's one good reason to protect yourself from the coronavirus. To stay away from the coronavirus so you don't bring it home to your pets. Another thing that I read was somewhere in a newspaper recently about maintaining good mental health during this crisis. And one of the things is, turn off the news. Don't listen to it all the time, and put your focus on things. Like if you make craft items or something, get yourself busy doing that. Watch comedy movies. And try all of these different recipes and things. I saw a recipe that I wished I'd had the pen and paper handy. I was watching something on television where this guy was showing how to make these cookies that was something that he felt was really nutritious. And they were totally gluten-free. There wasn't even gluten-free flour in them. He was using almond butter in place of in place of the flour, and then he sweetened it with maple syrup and threw in some organic chocolate chips, and wound up putting this mixture together and baking it in the oven. I didn't know that you could bake cookies without any flour at all, but he managed to do it. And but I guess that you can do that. You can't really go to the gym right now because you really, a lot of them are probably closed. And the gym, and anyways, you might not want to go there anyways just because of the coronavirus. But there are different kinds of exercises that you can do at home, inside of your house too. I know I've been doing that for years. I have been exercising at home with DVDs that are made special for you to exercise with, that are made by exercise instructors, and that's a lot of fun. When I'm exercising at home, like doing yoga or Tai Chi or belly dance or something like that, it's a lot more fun because, and the reason is, it's kind of fun. It's kind of like exercising with somebody else. And then there's music usually included on the exercise DVDs that's pleasant to listen to, and so forth. So that is something I do. And getting back to the leeks that I was talking about earlier, I can hardly wait to get out in the woods to get some. But they are really, really fun at this time of the year. Oh, books. Well, let's see, any book. Recommendations for quarantine reading? Wow. Yeah, you can get books on these subjects. I just saw in a catalog the other day, I saw a book about colloidal silver. Books about Edgar Cayce, the psychic, who I got the olive oil idea from on burns, sunburns, and other types of burns. Any book about Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet is one. There Is a River is another one about him. There are several really good books about Edgar Cayce. And the health readings he used to give for people, his rate of accuracy was something like 99%. I mean, he was very, very accurate. And anything about Edgar Cayce is just wonderful. I consider him one of my heroes. Even though he died before I was born, I consider him one of my heroes. Different things. There's a lot of herbal books out there and things. The Listerine. I don't have it on one of, let's see, I don't have it on the tip of my mind, a lot of different books, but you would want to check with him. And you can get books on different things. Like, for example, it helps a lot of people if they drink a glass of water with a teaspoon stirred into it every day to prevent acid reflux. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Right now, we are not having our Vegetarian Society dinners because of the coronavirus, but good sources of information are the speakers that we have that come on, and about a lot of different things. I've learned a lot of different things from the various different people that I have met. Maybe I should mention, after I had my thyroid cancer experience, I remember I ran across a book called How to Kill Your Cancer Without Killing Yourself. It's by a man named Alan Chips, and it is about the Hoxsey natural cancer therapy. It used to be, like in the first half of the 20th century, the Hoxsey family, well, it started out with Harry Hoxsey's great-grandfather. he had been a veterinarian, and he had a horse that had gotten cancer, and so he put the horse out to pasture, and the horse, instead of dying, got better. But he had noticed during this time period that the horse had eaten certain plants that horses normally never ate. And so he used it on other animals, on all other animals that got cancer afterwards. And it got passed down a couple of generations until it got to Harry Hoxsey. And he started, I think it might have been his father that started treating human cancer patients with the Hoxsey therapy. And he was very successful. Most of the people got better. And it was usually found that the majority of the ones that didn't make it hadn't stuck to the kind of diet they were supposed to stick to. Because you really have to follow the script if you want it to work. And but anyway, that and a DVD called Hoxsey, How Healing Becomes a Crime, and how much trouble he got in for treating cancer patients and everything. And it got driven out of the country eventually, even though it worked, because he wouldn't sell his formula to the AMA. So they had gone and lobbied around the federal government with a bunch of their money and got all 17 of the Hoxsey clinics that were in the United States closed and shut down. And they would even go to people's homes and confiscate their herbal mixtures and so forth. But the blood purifying herbs are things like dandelion, licorice root, something called marshmallow, but it's really nothing to do with the kind of candy that's marshmallows. It's an herb. And, burdock root, all kinds of, several different herbs. I can't think of them offhand, but that was another thing that I took with my thyroid cancer experience. And so that really worked out for me. One thing that I like to tell people is not to drink carbonated beverages. That's another thing with cancer is it's highly acidic. If you're going the natural route for cancer, you cannot eat anything that's an acidic food. You can't have vinegar, you can't eat sugar, you can't eat refined white flour, just about anything. But what I found out with the carbonated beverages is that because beverages are made carbonated by using carbon dioxide, and so they cause a deficiency of oxygen in a person's body. And it seems that all of the cancer patients have a lack of oxygen, a deficiency of oxygen. And it apparently, according to all of the studying I've done and all of the experts that I've met, that it is difficult, highly difficult for cancer cells to replicate in an oxygen-rich environment. So that's one thing that you want to do is keep your body oxygenated, deep breathing, exercise every day. Even if you have cancer, you should exercise for at least half an hour every day to oxygenate your body in order to help yourself recover. So anyways, you cannot get the Hoxsey therapy anymore, but those are some other good sources of information to check out. And there is, you could probably find out about the dentist that Ellie Phillips and her products. I think that she's got a couple of websites. One is cleanwhiteteeth.com is one of them. You could probably go on there to find out how to keep your dental health good. And I don't know if how many of you know this or not, but I was surprised to find out that what is that thing in? They put in a lot of toothpastes. The fluoride. Yeah, the fluoride is a carcinogen, and you really should not be putting that in the drinking water. Municipalities, the drinking water for communities, because it is a carcinogen, and now they're even starting to make, some companies are starting to make toothpaste that don't contain fluoride. There's other things that promote good oral health. Like in India, they use a couple of different things called neem and pilu, and those are referred to as the toothbrush trees in India, and neem and pilu is being put in a certain amount of toothpastes. And another thing is myrrh, M-Y-R-R-H. It's one of the things that the wise men brought to Jesus when he was born, is myrrh, that you can get. One company has a myrrh and propolis, formula of toothpaste that I like to get that sometimes. And another one has a variety of different herbs and things. And so if you can do that, that's always good too. And only put like a pea-sized amount of toothpaste on your toothbrush when you brush your teeth, because certain things are put in a lot of toothpaste that are abrasive. So anyways, this has been kind of uncomfortable, talking by myself instead of interviewing somebody. So I apologize for that. And we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives. I'll see the rest of you on the next episode in a couple of weeks. And stay safe.